Meanwhile, cardinals from around the world are descending on Rome ahead of Francis's funeral, and in the coming weeks, they will choose his successor. Among them, the Archbishop of New York, Timothy Cardinal Dolan. He shared his thoughts and memories of the late pontiff with CBS News evening news anchor Maurice Dubois.
When I heard the news, when I went into my chapel to pray for him, what was I thinking of? He called me when my mom died. He called me the second week into COVID and said, "How's New York doing?" He called me on October 7th and he said, "How are my Jewish friends in New York doing?" These are the things that move you. There's sort of a communal fascination and affection for him. You kind of expect it among Catholics, but when you see it outside, you're thinking, wow, the impact this man had. People felt hugged by him.
When you talk about that, people of other faiths coming up to you and expressing those deep condolences, not superficial ones, why do you think that is?
I remember his first Sunday in Rome after he was Pope. And what did he speak about? He spoke about tenderness. To hear the Pope speak about tenderness, mercy, compassion, love, this is what moved us about him.
CBS News papal contributor Candida Moss joins us now to talk more about this. So, Candida, you can perhaps describe right now, there are probably millions of people who saw the Hollywood film Conclave who have some inkling of what goes in to electing a new pope. But we need to separate fiction from reality. So describe for us the actual process that will happen.
Hi, Vlad. Great to be here. So in terms of the process of electing the Pope, conclave, as it's known, the cardinals will meet in about 2 weeks. Many of them will have already been there for the funeral. And they will meet at the Vatican in St. Peter's in the Sistine Chapel to elect the next Pope. They are sequestered, so they are not influenced by things in the outside world, and they cast a series of ballots. Only those under the age of 80 are eligible to vote. And in order to be elected as the next Pope, the Pope needs a 2/3 majority. And a majority of the cardinals who will be voting are actually Francis appointees. But this doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to end up with someone just like Francis. There's a lot of politicking behind the scenes.
So let's talk about some of the leading contenders. You and I have discussed this before, but back in 2013, I was a foreign correspondent. I was sent to Ghana to profile Cardinal Peter Turkson, who was at the time, had just come off of being the Bishop of Gold Coast, was a renowned and respected cardinal. He was in the top 3 of the contenders. Obviously, Francis went on to become the Pope. Is he still in the running? And who are some of the others that may be potentially considered?
It's a good question. So Peter Turkson is still in the running, but so is another African cardinal, Cardinal Fridolin Ambongo from the Congo, who holds a very high up leadership position in the African church and was quite friendly with Pope Francis as well. And both of them can be considered conservatives. There are a number of Italian candidates, Pietro Parolin, who met with Vice President Vance recently to discuss immigration, and is the Vatican Secretary of State, Matteo Zuppi from Bologna, who might be considered one of the progressive candidates, who's been very vocal in his support of LGBT Catholics and advocating for the poor, and Luis Antonio Tagle from the Philippines, who was a contender in the last conclave and is also seen as the Pope Francis of Asia.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Cardinal Tagle, as you know, Canada, was, from reports that I've read, Pope Francis's pick, or at least his ideal for potential successor. The question that you and I have batted around for years is the conservative nature of non-European cardinals, the African cardinals, the Asian cardinals, those that come from the Americas, Latin America specifically, tend to be very conservative. It is true that younger people are becoming increasingly conservative, but how could that sort of go against the things and the ideals that Francis championed?
Well, I think with someone like Tagle, he's interesting because he's been very involved in something called the New Evangelization, which is kind of a missionary outreach to Catholics to sort of come back to the church. And that was championed by John Paul II and Benedict XVI, both of whom are seen as conservatives. So Tagle's involvement in that might help him win votes from conservative cardinals, particularly in Africa. Whatever the case, whoever's going to be elected, they're going to have to win votes from cardinals all over the world. No longer can someone be elected a cardinal just because they're from Europe and they could rely on the sort of 33% of votes they could get from Italian cardinals as they could back in the, say, 1960s. The College of Cardinals looks very different now. But whomever is elected, whether they're a conservative or a progressive like Zuppi and Tagle, they are going to have to walk in the shoes of Pope Francis, who certainly changed the tone of the Catholic Church such that the future Pope will have to be a moral authority who leads by example.
So, final question then, Canada. Will, in your estimation, the new Pope, will they, hopefully, I guess, for the world's billion Catholics, continue some of the reforms and the progressive nature of Francis's papacy? Or could we see a swing back, perhaps more, as I mentioned earlier, to a, if not a conservative tilt of the papacy, perhaps a, let's not use the word conservative, but perhaps a more traditional one? And how would that be seen by laymen?
Well, generally, when you have a pope like Pope Francis, who has been quite bold in the moves that he's made and quite progressive in terms of the Catholic Church, there might be a pendulum swing back towards more traditional values. If we see that, I think that's going to disappoint progressive Catholics and also many non-Catholics who saw Pope Francis as a kind of modernizer. Whatever happens, this is a pivotal moment for the Catholic Church, and whomever is elected Pope next will be the one who sets the tone for the Catholic Church in the 21st century.
Fascinating. Always great to talk to you, my friend. Thank you, Candida Moss. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, let's see if we can go back to Rome and join up with CBS News papal contributor Francis Rocca. Hi, Francis. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi, how are you, Vlad?
Hey, how are you? All right. So, as you know, mourners have been pouring into Vatican City to pay their respects. What are we hearing from those mourners who have come to just be close to Francis before his funeral?
Well, it's a curious thing because of timing. Yesterday, the day of the Pope's death, was also a national holiday in Italy. The weather is beautiful. It's Easter week. It's a time when many people, international visitors, are on vacation. Pilgrims are also coming here. So there's a real mix of people in the square and all over. And so the people who are coming here specifically to mourn Pope Francis are mixed in with people who are here for perhaps religious reasons, perhaps just for vacation. And so it's a very curious coexistence, let's say. But I think it's not a somber mood. There's a sense of solemnity, a sense that an era has finished. A man who, to the last, was out there meeting people, being very active, is suddenly dead. That's solemn. But I don't think that you have people are distraught. There's not a sense of overwhelming sadness.
So, who do we expect to attend the funeral on Saturday?
Well, we already know, of course, that President Trump is coming, which was not a given. Typically in this situation, maybe the Vice President Vance, who met with the Pope hours before his death on Sunday. But so Trump is coming. We know that the President and the Prime Minister, President and Chancellor of Germany, the Prime Minister of Great Britain are coming, the President of Brazil. So those are some of the names that we already have so far. It will be interesting to see. The last papal funeral was 20 years ago when John Paul, and that was not only George W. Bush came, but former President Clinton came. The presidents of France, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, I think Prince Charles was there. So there were also some controversy over Mugabe was there from Zimbabwe, sorry. So we'll see if any leaders come this time that might create some controversy by their presence.
Indeed. All right, Frank Rocca, thank you very much for joining us this morning from Rome. We appreciate it.